New England Ski Journal's Basecamp Podcast, presented by Country Ski and Sport. Ski season is here, and it's time to gear up at Country Ski and Sport. Shop now for your best preseason deals at any of their 3 locations in Hanson, Quincy, and Westwood, Mass. Or shop online at countryski.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Basecamp Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Specian, with my co-host, my producer right at the moment,
Johnny Fellin, or producer David Yaz, at your service. And, I've jokingly said on these podcasts in the past that I know very little about skiing, but every moment I'm beside you, Mike, the knowledge is growing. That I feel the snow is starting to come out of my ears.
Well, David, usually you're over at the control panel. Well, Eric Wilbur is here with me, and I can't wait to have Eric back. Nothing personal at all.
None taken. Me too.
But, I would assume you have learned an awful lot about skiing this year.
It's been a great season. Here we are, the ski season finale, anyways, of the podcast. And it's been tremendous. I mean, you guys do such a good job bringing the best and sometimes the most famous, most accomplished people in the world of skiing in New England and beyond. What stands out for you?
Well, first off, I cannot believe we have been going since August here with the ski season when we kicked this year off, year number 2 of the podcast. But I think the first thing that really kicks off to me as a recap, we started with a vibrant person that is really doing wonders in the ski industry right now, in Doug Lewis. I could not believe how much energy he brought in August to what he is doing for training. Terrific
guest. Learned a lot from that one. The show, one of the shows that stuck out to me was, and really three shows on movies that we did, ski-related movies. So I remember growing up, I might have had to sneak in to see the movie Hot Dog because it was an R-rated movie, and I think I was a little but man, it was worth it. You might have come for the pretty babes, but you stayed for the skiing. And to get to hear 2 of the principal players in that movie and other ski movies, I got a big kick out of that.
Yeah, the movie trilogy series that we did with Hot Dog starting it off, really the starting point of, really influential movies here in this country. But having Mike Marvin and Lynn Weiland on was just awesome. But then from my era, Greg Stump and Mike Hattrip with Blizzard of Awesome. Remember that?
Of course.
Just so you guys all know, I had to call Greg Stump because he wasn't awake, and Hattrip was in Salt Lake laughing his butt off, going, yep. And I've got to go one step farther. Stump actually butt dialed me late at night, and he was at a bar, and I don't want to tell you what the conversation was, where it was going, but it was pretty hilarious. I'm going, Greg, what's up, Greg? And then I just sat there and listened, but that was hilarious.
So what the Basecamp Podcast does, Mike, we bring people to the slopes, and sometimes on those slopes they're expert skiing, but other times it's après ski. It's sometimes sleeping in because of the previous day's activities. The skiing life.
Exactly. And anybody that knows Greg Stump or of Greg Stump, that's what he brought to the ski world right there. And then we finished off with Todd Jones. I mean, New England's own TGR. Everybody knows who TGR, Teton Gravity Research. But that trilogy, it was so much fun because there was such continuity of seeing where movies have come. What about inspirational? What did you think about the Kelly Brush Foundation and New England Disabled Sports?
Yeah, tremendous. I know I've told you, Mike, that I'm a special needs dad, and my son, who has autism, doesn't happen to be a skier, but being in the special needs world, I've met many families, and for some kids, particularly those with physical challenges, skiing is a godsend. A lot of kids, and I'll just say, for a lot of kids that can't walk, yes, they can ski, and thanks to Kelly Brush and others. And so just tremendous. Just that I left that day with a smile on my face.
I can tell you both those episodes really, look, I'm a skier, but to see what both those episodes are doing for people, that need that little extra help was tremendous. I mean, those two episodes really hit my heart in a big way. And then the world-class athletes we've had.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm no expert in the world of skiing, but I remember Glenn Plake being on TV commercials when I was a kid, and we all wanted to know about the guy doing all kinds of tricks and somehow keeping his mohawk absolutely perfectly in place. And so he was the first one that I was a little bit starstruck, but we've had many on the show.
Yeah, I mean, Glenn Plake was there. Kim Reichhelm, who had her own movie scene. These people have been on the Today Show and stuff like that. And then John Egan. I mean, truly, truly, truly a soulful New England-owned guy. And Kristen Almer. Mm-hmm. I mean, Kristen, who can not forget about the video on YouTube that we have? If you haven't seen it, you got to go look. But Kristen was laughing about the picture behind her.
And she's in Las Vegas, It being the star that she is, of course, she would be in this suite in Vegas with a very tasteful piece of art that featured a nude woman in the back. So if that's not a reason enough to go to our YouTube channel, I don't know what is, Mike.
Well, it's bringing skiing of the 80s back to, the year 2024. Mm-hmm. Well, the other one that Protect Our Winners. When Eric, I got the guests. I get most of the guests, let's put it that way. But talking about Protect Our Winners and what we need to do to sustain skiing for the future, I thought that episode really hit home also.
Terrific one. Yeah. And, there's a lot of discussion about there wasn't much discussion when we were kids about global warming and about the fate of our winters in the future. But Protect Our Winters was a great episode. I learned a lot from that one.
Yeah. I mean, there has been a lot of thought put into where this podcast was going to go, trying to make it so that it was informative, but also relevant to us all as skiers. And, they aren't fly-by-night people that we're talking to. They are influential people trying to make a difference. And, it's been a fun year.
It's been terrific. And more to come, of course, the end of the ski season, but not the end of this podcast. So we encourage you to stay tuned to your same channel. But great show today. Great. And I know that our guest, David Goodman, has told us he's excited to be the closer, to be the guy that finishes out the ski season.
Yes, David Goodman, the godfather of New England backcountry skiing, is going to take us on a little journey. And, that journey is going to end with, the rite of passage here in New England in springtime, which is Tuckerman's. I'm really stoked to have David on. He is renowned in the New England backcountry community with AMC, and he's going to be on next.
Let's do it.
Looking for expert ski, snowboard, and boot fitting advice? Stop into one of Country Ski & Sport's 3 locations in Quincy, Westwood, or Hanson, Mass. As a third-generation family business, Country Ski has provided Boston area skiers with the best service and discounts in the area for over 50 years. Whether you are brand new to the sport or a seasoned veteran, Country Ski has the equipment and accessories for all ability levels. Don't forget to ask about their popular season lease program, which helps families eliminate the growing pains of purchasing new equipment every year as kids grow. And don't forget, any child 18 years or younger receives a free season pass to Saddleback Mountain with each lease from Country Ski. Visit countryski.com for all the latest information or to shop online.
The Button Ski Hanger is a patented ski storage fixture that safely stores alpine skis regardless of length, width, or shape. This means that your fat powder skis can now be stored next to your narrower carving skis, your race skis, and your kid skis. For more information, visit their website, buttonskirack.com. The Button Ski Hanger is also available for purchase at amazon.com. So make your purchase today. The Button Ski Hanger is simply better for your skis.
At 4,237 feet, Sugarloaf is one of the largest ski areas in the east and second highest peak in the state of Maine, trailing only Mount Katahdin. Boasting over 1,300 acres of open terrain and a vertical drop of nearly 3,000 feet, Sugarloaf offers a wide variety of terrain for all ability levels. A historic winter is ahead with the debut of West Mountain. It's the largest terrain expansion in the Northeast since the late 1970s, adding 12 new beginner and intermediate trails, 88,000 feet of snowmaking pipe, and 246 HKD snowmaking guns. Sugarloaf is a destination not to be missed. Stay slopeside and plan your trip today at sugarloaf.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. On with us now from Vermont, David Goodman. He is the author of the best backcountry skiing in the Northeast. Hi, David. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, especially because winter has returned to Vermont. And I have been living in fear that I was going to have to mow my lawn in March. And that is definitely not going to happen. We're back in business here.
Winter is back, thank goodness. It's been a roller coaster for sure. So the Vermont Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame made this comment. With deep passion for skiing, love of history, and his gift of storytelling, David has inspired countless skiers to make their own tracks in the winter wilderness. You are known as the godfather of Northeast backcountry skiing. Where are you from and what is your background?
Well, it might be a little unlikely that where I'm from is from the famous mountainous region known as Long Island. That's a joke because it's as flat as a pancake.
Oh, there's some dunes.
There are some dunes, yes. And there was actually, I don't know if there's still any ski areas. There were when I was growing up. There was one called Bald Hill, which is probably aptly named. Something tells me it's condos by now. But so grew up there, went to school at Harvard in Boston, which was really my intro to mountains, the mountains of the Northeast. And my family were, the 1 week a year ski adventurers, and we'd go up to New Hampshire, Vermont, and Quebec. I remember Mont Sutton. Those were some of our outings, but it was really being in school in Boston and then making regular trips further north that where this passion of mine developed. And it really was developed at the same time that I was rock climbing and mountaineering and working as an instructor for Outward Bound. So all of those kind of things wove themselves together when I got asked in the late 1980s by the Appalachian Mountain Club. I was beginning as a freelance writer then and had just written an article called The Northeastern Renaissance, and it was about the renaissance of backcountry skiing in the Northeast. And right then, the AMC calls me and says, would I like to do a book about skiing? And of course, I laughed and thought my friends were pranking me because who would pay me? Not much, but to ski. And they said, no, we're serious. And I said, well, yeah, what would it be about? What would you want it to be about? And they said, well, we were hoping you could tell us. And I thought, that's a really bad thing to do, is to let me tell you what to do, because what I decided was, let me tell you what me and my friends like to do, and which is ski on the highest mountains of the Northeast, Mount Washington, Mount Mansfield, Mount Greylock, but not where the alpine ski areas were, because we were cheap dirt bags and we were always looking for the backside and the ways down the mountain that you couldn't get to on the lifts. And I thought that, maybe 200 people would buy the book, and my mother would be responsible for 100 of those sales. And the other 100, I would be related to or housemates with the other 95. And so maybe, a handful of people would actually be interested in this crazy kind of skiing that we were doing on telemark skis at that time. And lo and behold, the book comes out, 1989. It was called Classic Backcountry Skiing. And I discover very quickly tattered copies of this on dashboards at trailheads all around the Northeast. They were tattered, I would like to think, because, readers loved them so much they couldn't put it down. But actually, that first edition that the AMC published came with a defective spine. So the moment you opened the book snapped in half and became a loose leaf book. So pages of that book can be found blowing in the wind in parking lots and mountaintops all around the Northeast.
So automatically you could take the page out, put it in your backpack, and have it with you during the ascent.
And for for the ultralight crowd, that was exactly what they did, never to find that tattered, sweat-soaked piece of paper again.
Well, 89. Oh my goodness, that was a long time ago. Boston had Wilderness House, which was,
yes, I knew it well.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. It was an icon for the outdoor crowd, and EMS was right across the street on Comm Ave.
Those were bargain basement, which I loved.
Yep, those were incredible days. What brought you to writing your current book? What brought you to that point?
So what I thought would be a one-off, and interestingly, the AMC later told me, one of the editors, that it was considered a very radical, edgy move for the AMC to do a book about skiing, because there were purists in the organization that said, "Hey, we're a hiking organization. We don't do books about skiing." But actually, that was funny to me, because as a ski history buff, and I was a history major in college, so I loved the backstory of all these ski trails. I knew that the AMC actually, back in the 30s and 40s, was a major, if not the major organization sponsoring ski outings up to Mount Washington. They were doing the snow trains up north to Stowe and Pinkham Notch, North Conway. So they'd long been in that business. But my original interest in this really came about partly because of my interest in and love for history. So I approached the trails that I was finding, which all had these rich backstories. The Thunderbolt on Mount Greylock, the Teardrop Trail on Mount Mansfield, the Wildcat Trail on Wildcat Mountain. They all had these incredibly colorful histories. So naturally, both as a history buff and a journalist, I wanted to find the people responsible for them. So remember, late 80s, all of the trailblazers were still alive. It didn't occur to me that, this is a perishable commodity. These guys were, they were getting well on in years. So I was going around and interviewing people who are now legends in the ski world. Sel Hanna, the developer of Cannon Mountain and many other places, and one of the people behind Snow Engineering, which was sort of invented snowmaking.
Sure. Yep.
Charlie Lord, the trail designer of Sugarbush, Mad River Glen, Stowe, and so many other places in Vermont. I'm just going around and just having a ball, sitting in their living rooms, hearing them tell stories of when and why they cut the trail. Sel Hanna famously told me, he said, "Oh, yes, so I was writing about a trail off the backside of Cannon, the Tucker Brook Trail, and he lived right at the foot of Cannon. He said, "Oh, yeah, I we cut the Tucker Brook because we put it on the side of the mountain where all the snow was." He said, "And then the state of New Hampshire came along and they put the ski area on the wrong side of the mountain, and they've been paying me to fix it ever since." So um, that was, storytelling gold. And it's woven throughout the book are the actual first person accounts of the people who were the trailblazers of the Northeast. And then the AMC has asked me basically every 10 years to update it. So I'm on the fourth iteration. They keep changing the title. So now it's, as you said, Best Backcountry Skiing in the Northeast. Um, and I suppose there will be another one. But yeah, we're many decades into this wonderful storytelling project. The sport has changed dramatically in that time, and we can get into that. But there we are. That's how we got here.
Oh, well, the AMC has been so crucial to so many people getting out into the backcountry or on rivers or in touring boats on the shoreline. We had them on last summer, and we had a very robust conversation with AMC about what they were doing. And I am so excited that they have embraced what you're doing and what you bring to it. You brought up telemarking. Back in those days, originally, everything was 3-pin.
Yes.
How has equipment changed the backcountry experience today with tech bindings, tech boots, and so on?
It has revolutionized backcountry skiing. When I began writing these books, it was a pretty fringy activity. And yes, the books have, been very popular. But it really was, the backcountry was reserved for the telemark crowd, the people who could go uphill faster and lighter than anyone else. And interestingly, alpine touring, AT as it's known, um, was really just a thing it was a European thing. It had, it was a Western thing, but it was most definitely never a Northeastern thing. We were the last adopters of this. Early generation AT stuff was clunky, heavy, and not really well suited to our rolling terrain in the Northeast, where, if you're in the Alps or even in the Tetons, you can pretty well assured you're just going to go uphill the whole time until you pull off your skins to go downhill. But in the East, you're going to go up and down and up and down and up and down, which is not very nice on the older style of alpine touring skis. If you'd have told me even 10 years ago that, in 2010, that the next edition by 2020, telemark would have almost completely vanished, alpine touring would be 90% of what people were using, and the other smattering would be split boards and telemark, I would have thought, what are you talking about? But there has been a confluence of forces that have converged to revolutionize backcountry skiing, and that is in the design of equipment. I would say the two things are the equipment, which has gotten super light, super minimalist. I mean, I'm talking you can, between your two fingers, pick up an alpine touring ski and binding setup today.
Sure.
You can pick up a pair of boots with your pinky. The revolution in plastics, in skis. So that happened. The other thing that happened was COVID. And almost by magic, something happens where everybody wants to be outside and the ski area is shut down or sharply limit use. And lo and behold, right at that moment, alpine touring equipment has arrived so that anybody who can ski can backcountry ski. You no longer have to have dreadlocks or know a secret turn or a secret password. You don't have to telemark. So it just has exploded. It is the fastest growing segment of the ski market, and it continues to sort of just propel forward by leaps and bounds. And I love it. I love the fact that people are able to get out to ski the way they know how to ski, but to get out into wild places, because it's, I think that is just a balm for the soul. I think everybody needs, um, just a way to get away. It's such crazy times now. We do have so much beautiful wild terrain in the Northeast, and I love seeing people out there. And while there are those who are, very protective of their stashes, I am too. I think sharing is really nice, and there's enough to go around and still have your secret stashes. So I'm glad to be part of the sharing part of it that helps people get out. You need to know where to go. And if I can help people get to wild places where they kind of recharge their batteries, then I'm happy to play that role.
Well, I'm glad you're there, and I'm glad you're playing that role. We had on a couple episodes ago Ben White, who grew up here in the East. The reason why I had him on, first off, I know the family very well, but also Ben, the senior, I believe it was his senior year of high school, did all the 48 4,000 footers in New Hampshire in one winter, but we were talking about equipment on that episode. He did it in plug boots with no walk mode because it's what he had, and alpine skis. And I was like, how in the world? I couldn't imagine that today.
That sounds like torture, but hey, power to him. Would not be my choice. I am a fan of being warm and comfortable in the outdoors. People say, "Oh, why do you do that?" You're out in the winter. It's like, well, I'm not cold and I am comfortable. Um, I'm a great advocate for being comfortable when you go skiing, because things that are uncomfortable you don't tend to do for very long. Um, so good on him, but not for me. And skiing, being
Not
the
for
first
me
to
on
ski
the.
the 48 highest peaks that's an incredibly cool thing.
It is. And I think you were talking about equipment, how light it is. Grillamid changed ski boots, something incredible. My alpine boots, my touring boots, everything is that way now. And as you stated, the use of carbon and stuff in skis has just revolutionized how we view climbing, because the
And
real kicker is the climb.
it is. You spend most of your day going uphill, and it's where you catch up with your friends. It's where you get to have real conversations that are not truncated into 4-minute bursts on a high-speed quad. In fact, when I first started doing this, I always remember this old timer, Fraser Noble, who was at Mount Wachusett, and I was interviewing him because he was one of the pioneers of a backcountry trail there called the Pine Hill Trail, still a popular hiking trail, not so much for skiing. And Fraser was telling me, he was probably in his 80s when I was interviewing, talked about the era of what they call down mountain skiing, or, uphill skiing, whatever you want to call it. And he said, that's when he said we would go on dates then. And it's true. When I look at photos of skiing in the 30s and 40s, the backcountry skiing, of course, they didn't call it backcountry skiing, it was just skiing. Um, it was equal parts numbers of men and women. There was nothing particularly macho about it, and it was really fun to see those images. And he said, "Yeah, well, that's when we would go on dates, and that's the uphill is when we would get to know each other." He said, "Now when I sit on these high speed chairlifts, I can hardly remember. I don't even know if I asked the person their name." So I do think that social part and the uphill part is the essence of the backcountry skiing. But I would encourage people, if they haven't, if they try this, pick up some of these modern skimo or ski mountaineering setups. Even just do it in the store to realize how far we've come, like how light it is. People are literally running uphill. I'm not running uphill. I go at a conversational pace. But also, you'll appreciate at the next Winter Olympics, which is next year in Italy, ski mountaineering or skimo is going to be an Olympic sport. Um, you got. I was just checking out the Olympics. Put out a video of what it is, and oh my gosh, they are literally running uphill on their skis, up steep hills on their, and then skiing down, ungroomed wild snow on these featherweight gear that they use. But anyway, it's just, you can see where it's come. You can start to see that, oh, that would be pretty comfortable to go uphill. It's not your alpine skis. So people should not think that the heavy gear that they throw in the car for the weekend is what you want to use. It's a really nice light. It's the difference between like running in running shoes and running in hiking boots.
That's a good analogy because it really is. Why don't you take us through what's inside the book, what we'll find?
So I would love to think that people who get as much pleasure out of reading as they do out of skiing, that equal, you'll both will be satisfied. So it's on a simple level. It's where to go backcountry skiing all throughout the Northeast, from the Adirondacks to Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, and Western Massachusetts. But it's also a lot of storytelling. It's a lot of the history. And I think that's what makes New England so special and so cool. We have this rich history. And, the story of skiing is sort of the social history and political history of New England. Skiing came to Vermont. The first ski trails were cut by the Civilian Conservation Corps, a Depression era jobs program that FDR created. They were often known as Roosevelt's Forest Army. And what was happening after the Depression is you had, you know, armies of unemployed men, and they were men in the CCC. And so the idea was to send them to all the states. And oddly, in the Northeast, the CCC was put under, or at least in Vermont, it was put under the jurisdiction of the state forester. And in Vermont, that was a man named Perry Merrill. And he had gotten trained as a forester in Sweden. So Perry Merrill is the state forester in Vermont, a very poor, rural, agrarian state. And while he's training as a forester in Sweden, there he sees skiing is life. And he gets this idea, I wonder if skiing could help this poor New England state, just be something other than the dairy industry. So all of a sudden, the Depression hits, and thousands of axe and saw wielding men are put under at the disposal of the state forester. And Perry Merrill has the crazy idea, and he says, I want you to go up the highest peak in our state, Mount Mansfield, and cut a ski trail. And so they go, and I interviewed Charlie Lord about this, who was,
Sure.
and he puts this CCC crew under the direction of an unemployed state highway engineer named Charlie Lord. Charlie, because he was a skiing enthusiast, although he would be the first to say not a good one. So Charlie is overseeing this crew hack and cut and saw their way up the side of Mount Mansfield in what became known as the Bruce Trail, the first trail on Mount Mansfield. And I asked Charlie, what did they think? I mean, and there are photos of these guys, knee deep in snow. And he said, they were very enthusiastic workers. And he said, but when it really paid off was when we had the first race on it. So, the winter after they cut it, they have the first race. It's all the top college kids, Dick Durrance from Dartmouth. And he said the CCC guys lined the trails, and they just were cheering, and they were so thrilled that something that they had cut was, now the scene of this fun thing. I asked Charlie, did any of them ski? He said, no, none of them skied. But then they carried on, and they kept cutting these ski trails. People saw what was happening in Vermont. They were cutting ski trails in Maine and New Hampshire as well. And this became the, hold on here, turn off my phone, which of course ringing at a very inconvenient time. This became the nucleus of the modern ski industry. And many of those trails, the Wildcat Trail on Wildcat, what became the Nosedive at Stowe, also CCC, became where they put the chairlifts. But many of the trails were on the wrong side of the mountain from the chairlifts, and that became what the focus of my book. So an interesting thing that happened since I first wrote these books is that some of these backcountry trails, which had been cut in the 30s and were in, when I first went out skiing them, they were kind of in various shapes of repair and
Sure.
disrepair.
Sure.
Some of them were pretty sketchy. But so in the interim, they end up in my book, and a lot of them were being very informally maintained by local skiers who lived in the communities right at the foot of them, because people just love powder skiing and they love skiing in the wilderness without chairlifts. So in the ensuing years, perhaps partly because of my book, they've gotten a lot more love, and these trails are in great shape. And I will just say, many of them are really maintained to pretty high standards now, far higher than when I first began. Um, and one of the things that really thrills me is that it's given rise to this kind of grassroots skiing movement, the Granite Backcountry Alliance of New Hampshire, the Ridgeline Outdoor Collective of Vermont, that is now cutting the first new backcountry ski trails since the 1930s. That's almost 100 years ago. So this is a new golden era of backcountry skiing we're in.
I have been watching what has been happening with the new cuts and stuff. It's pretty amazing. I'm in New Hampshire. When my knee is better, but also when there's snow, I want to get up there and experience that. Now we're in springtime, full on springtime here. March snows in Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine. But springtime means Tuckermans.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, what does Tuckermans mean to the backcountry community as a whole?
Tuckermans is the high church of skiing in America. It is the greatest celebration on snow that occurs anywhere. On a good spring weekend, thousands of people will make the pilgrimage to Tux to celebrate sliding in every form. And, I've seen, inner tubes, cafeteria trays, and, which can end badly for
Yep.
people, but most importantly, skiing, because there is, come springtime, the avalanche danger pretty much settles out, although you still have to check the avalanche forecast. But the high avalanche danger of midwinter kind of is past, and you're into corn snow. And the beauty of Tuckerman's is that you only climb up what you can ski down. So in theory, you can keep yourself out of trouble because, as the thing, it's for people who haven't been there, it's like a teacup cut in half. So you're ascending this bowl, and you go as high as you feel like you have the nerve to put your skis on and point them downhill. So hopefully that has a sobering effect on people, because it gets really, really steep. I mean, it gets so steep that as you're hiking up, your knees are knocking against the snow in front of you. It's like climbing a wall. Pitches of 45 degrees, even over 50 degrees. People hear that and they think, oh, well, that's not so steep. That's just like, oh, this is 45 degrees is like, well, actually, for a point of reference, the steepest expert trails in the Northeast top out at about 38 degrees. So when you go down Outer Limits at Stowe or Paradise at Mad River, you're not even hardly touching 40 degrees. From your mind's eye, round about 40 degrees, 45 degrees, you start telling your friends you skied something that was dead vertical. So anything in that over 40-degree range is very steep, very thrilling to ski, but also can be high consequences. And, there's a serious side to skiing Tuckermans that people need to be aware of. I write a lot about how to ski it safely and where to ski. There are named runs all throughout the bowl. There's history in all those runs. I've interviewed many of the people who did the first descents, notably Brooks Dodge, who is
Sure.
the author of many of the steepest runs on Mount Washington. But this is a serious place too. People, of course, are aware that there have been fatalities there, including recently. And it's really breaks my heart when I see that. This is not Disneyland. It is the mountains. So you need to take it seriously, what you're doing there.
We're going to come back to that question in a moment here. But before we go back to that, why don't you give us two classic lines down Tuckerman's that, that if you were going there today, it would be your first choice?
So the classic, of course, is skiing over the lip.
Of course.
The lip is the very top of the bowl, looker's right side. It ranges every year, whether it's a wide, broad entrance or a little slot, like threading a needle. There are waterfalls on one side and rocks on another, so that defines the pathway. But basically, you hike up the bowl, you can hike up the lip, or as I like to do, I hike up Right Gully and walk around to the lip. On top of Tuckerman's Ravine, it's flat. It's called the Bigelow Lawn. So it actually, strangely, you've just hiked this super steep thing and then it's flat. So when you drop in from that flat area, it feels like the earth is falling away. It's like skiing over a cue ball. So all of a sudden, sky rushes up below your skis and you can be flying, you can be trying to keep your skis on the ground, but it is super steep and you got to figure out your line. So the lip, skiing over the lip, I think everybody remembers their first time. It takes equal parts courage and I don't know what else aids people at that moment, but that would be one of my favorites. Another would be Hillman's Highway. So Hillman's is actually outside of the bowl proper, and the bowl refers to all the many ski runs in that kind of teacup cut in half. But just outside of that bowl is this long, massive run called Hillman's Highway, named for a guy named Henry Hillman. And you hike straight up Hillman's as high as you want to go. You can go all the way to the top. And it just feels like you're making turns forever. You see, the whole Mount Washington Valley below you. It's 100-mile views up there. Really thrilling. It's pretty wide, so you got plenty of room to make turns. But in steep terrain, it's always the first turn that is the most memorable. What you have to talk yourself into to make that first turn as your mind is chattering endlessly telling you, don't do it. This is not going to go well. And you somehow have to turn off those voices and drop in.
Yeah, that first turn, there's a pucker factor with the first turn. The year my wife and I moved to Colorado, I can remember to the moment I was sitting up on the top of Left Gully one day. It was a Tuesday, I think. The next Tuesday, I was sitting on top of the east wall at A Basin at the exact same time. And I can tell you that 1 week apart, the moment was the exact same. It was being in awe. It was, oh boy, the first turn, don't miss it. But once you get into those situations and you just let yourself go, the rush, the energy through the body is amazing, to say the least.
Here's what New Hampshire has that skiers in Colorado, including yourself at that moment, only can dream of having: oxygen.
Yes, 100%.
That ace wall at A Basin tops out at around 13,000 feet. You're gasping for air, and not just because it's steep. At least on Mount Washington, we got oxygen aplenty. 6,000 feet is a pretty, that's the top of Mount Washington. That's a pretty survivable place.
Well, you've been doing this for an awful long time. 89, that was, boy, we're dating both of us here. We talked about fatalities and stuff on Mount Washington. We just lost a college student out of UVM, and 2 others were seriously hurt. And from what I read, the Rangers saw 2 other people slide. What would you tell the audience about either no or go? How do you make that decision?
I have read about those fatalities, and it's so tragic because I know that what brought them to those places was just joy and wanting to experience a high and wild environment, something I have felt so many times. So really, every time I read about an accident, I feel like, there go I, but for the grace of God. I don't feel smarter and, more anything. I just feel like I understand what draws people to these wild places. The 2 biggest hazards, I would say, that we face in these high mountain environments are avalanches and the conditions we call bulletproof, and that's hard snow. The problem that you have in Tuckerman's and in other places, but especially Tuckerman's, um, is that you've worked so hard to get there. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
you've driven 3 hours from Boston, then you've hiked 3 hours to get all the way up into Tux, and then you've knocked yourself out to get up to the top. And it's really hard to do all that and say, this isn't the day. I have been up in Tuckerman's many times in hard snow, and I have a very healthy respect/fear of those conditions because things happen with such speed. You just have no control. So I've turned around. I've gotten all the way to the base, and I really want to encourage people that part of the experience of going into the high mountains is sometimes you could just go to appreciate the views. You just go to get blown around in winds that you can't feel quite as crisply anywhere else. And that can be enough too. There's a wonderful ski trail below Tuckerman Ravine, the Sherburne Trail, probably the most popular backcountry ski trail. It's almost 3 miles of downhill turns, great skiing. That's a fabulous consolation prize. Lots of people just go up to ski the Sherburne Trail. Actually, I think it's a little over 2 miles, 2.5 miles top to bottom on the Sherburne. So if you hike up into the bowl, check it out, see the snow shining, or feel that you can't even get an edge in, just enjoy the views. It's an amazing place. Hike down, and you'll have a 2.5 mile really fun ski out. You don't have to be on the steep terrain where it's unforgiving. I don't like to be in places where, as extreme skiers say, if you fall, you die. That's not me. I really like to live to see the next day and the next day and the next day. So having the ability to tell yourself, not my day, or ski something else. And again, there's the Sherburne Trail to ski. That's really important. But I also understand the allure that it's hard. It's hard to do that. But experience teaches you have to do that.
Well, calculated risk. And I think, I'm a retired firefighter. Everything was calculated risk. And we need to view that when we go out into the backcountry, whether it be hiking the Prezi Traverse or skiing Tuckerman's. We have to realize that there are consequences, and I hope people use common sense, because I think 99% of it comes down to common sense of what are the ramifications. We just had a freeze-thaw cycle. How is that going to affect everything? But, well, what's next for you?
Well, I just wrote an article for the Boston Globe magazine about a climbing disaster on Mount Katahdin. Called the article's called Pomola's Fury, and that's something I've been working on for years. It's a story I've known about for years. I did a ski expedition across Baxter State Park back in the 90s, and one of the people I was with, Peter Cole, who's a photographer and an ice climber, was on the rescue mission of that. So That is something I just did, and I'm continuing to work on that in maybe some other formats that may come out. So that's part of what's next. I do a weekly podcast called the Vermont Conversation, which is just a public affairs, ranging from this week I had on an interview that I did with the late great activist Tom Hayden. Next week, I'll be doing something about a Vermont filmmaker. So it's a little bit of everything. I write about politics. I write about the outdoors. So I love the mix of things that I get to pursue as a freelance author and journalist and podcaster.
Yeah. Oh, the name of the podcast is Vermont what?
It's called the Vermont Conversation, and it's hosted on Vermont Digger, which is Vermont's largest news organization. It's a nonprofit newsroom. So just keeping on doing that will be, and I do a lot of writing these days for the New York Times, so I'll continue with that as well. So I'm never sure what's next, but in that mix of things that I just described, and I can be a little hard to find on powder days.
Well, I hope so. The reason why you do what you do is because of those powder days, and we have to keep all of our priorities straight. I want to thank you for coming on, for your book, for what you have done for backcountry skiing here in New England. It was an absolute pleasure having you on today.
It was great to talk with you too, Mike.
This is the year to visit the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort. With over 450 inches of annual snowfall, 4,000 vertical feet of continuous fall line skiing, a world-renowned ski school, and terrain for everyone, the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort is perfect for your next ski trip with friends or family. Off the slopes, Jackson Hole offers adventure and relaxation. Visit Yellowstone or Grand Teton National Parks. See elk, moose, and bison roaming in their natural habitats, or relax in a hot spring or at a spa. No more excuses. This is the year to go visit Jackson Hole. Go to jacksonhole.com for more information.
Hestra knows hands. For over 80 years, Hestra has been producing the highest quality, warmest gloves you can own. Crafted with durable, form-fitting leathers, they are made with the end user in mind. Don't let cold hands end a great day of skiing or snowboarding early. With hundreds of different options, you'll find a Hestra glove that fits your needs. Check out Hestra Gloves at hestragloves.com. That's HESTRAGLOVES.com. Or at your local ski shop or wherever Hestra Gloves are sold. Hestra Gloves, taking care of your hands since 1936.
Welcome back to the Basecamp Podcast. It has been an incredible, incredible pleasure being with you all this winter. Once again, I'm going to say that on behalf of myself and Eric Wilbur and our producer, David Yass. It has been fun. It has been informative. We have had some great guests on, but it would really be bad if we didn't acknowledge the people that helped to make this whole thing possible.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Was that my cue or not? It was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
This is unrehearsed, people. If you hadn't told, this is a podcast. So, yeah, we do want to thank some of the people that have made the podcast possible. First and foremost, Country Ski and Sport, proud presenting sponsor of the 2024 ski season. They've been a supporter of the podcast and of the magazine New England Ski Journal each year. And just terrific outfit. We were out there for the expo this year, which was great fun. We talked to a lot of people there, set up live. It's the only time we did that all year, which was tremendous. And the whole Stenson family, Ray Stenson, thanks so much for being such a big supporter of the pod.
You know what? We did one remote. I think for next year, David, that I will do a little traveling and I'll do some remotes from Quebec, from the ski areas, bring skiers in so that it's a little bit more live.
I love it. I'll call your bluff. We've got the remote recording equipment right here, so we'll set you up.
I like
Sounds
it.
Good. Okay.
We also want to say thank you to Hestra, who I will say is the best glove manufacturer in the marketplace. They make a great product. I want to thank Hestra for the pair of gloves they gave myself and the pair to Eric. You know, I have been using Hestra gloves for as long as I can remember. They came into the marketplace in 1936, I believe it is, and they know what they're doing. So when you're thinking your next pair of ski or snowboard gloves, make sure you look at Hestra. And I know Country Ski, our other supporter, carries them. So thank you, Hestra, for everything this year.
Let's also send a shout out to Button Ski Rack, proud supporter of the podcast, and its proud inventor, Pete Totman. So Pete's a guy who really gets it, one of the great guys in this industry. And the Button Ski Rack, just a fantastic product. I know I've heard you talk about it before, Mike, when it comes to storing your skis. So big thanks to Pete and everybody at Button Ski Rack. Yeah,
Button, the cool thing is you can configure that ski rack any way you want because it holds the binding. It's really a cool little piece. Hats off, guys. And then, of course, our resort partners. You know, we've had each one of these guys on the podcast over the last year and a half. Burke Mountain, just up the road, past Cannon. It is a great ski area. My son grew up doing a lot of skiing there. And how can a ski area that helped create Michaela Schifrin not be a winner? Thank you, Burke, for all your support this year.
Let me send a thank you out to the people at the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort. And although Mike and I sit here in Milton, Mass. doing this podcast, I can tell you, Mike would probably rather be at Jackson Hole right now. So we want to thank everybody there because they've been supporters of the pod from the very beginning. The good folks there, Hadley Bryans, Ned Watson, and Andrew Way. And so they remind you, you can get on a plane and go out to Jackson Hole. We could be there by dinner time, Mike, maybe.
I've got to check my wife. No, I'm not going to check with my wife.
Let's just go.
It's not going to work. I'm just going to go. By the way, Jackson, and this is from somebody that skied all over this country. Jackson is, in my opinion, the best raw skiing mountain in the country, period. It is real. When we had him on, we talked about the Hobacks, the Moran Face. It is just an incredible, incredible ski area. Get out there and enjoy it. And lastly, one of my favorites, I've spent a boatload of time there, Sugarloaf Mountain up in Maine. They have incredible snow right now. They got late dumps. They hold the snow the latest. And, of course, Reggae Fest is coming. Get up there and enjoy Sugarloaf. Thank you, Sugarloaf, for all your support this year.
Well, that's going to do it. Now, again, end of season, surely not the end of this podcast, but we encourage you, by the way, to share this podcast with your favorite ski enthusiast. And the great thing about this pod is you can cherry pick. You can go down and look. You want to hear about a big mountain skier. You want to hear about one of the greatest ski movies ever made. You know, go back and we encourage you to look at those episodes that you haven't heard from yet. So, any final thoughts, Mike?
Well, on behalf of myself, Eric Wilbur, who's not here at the moment, and David Yass, we want to say thank you for joining us this winter. We will be back in May with our summer podcast bi-weekly, as we did last year. If you have any thoughts about what you'd like to hear about, please, please, please send them off to Eric Wilbur. And, you know, we will make it happen. I can get guests. That's not a problem. We just need to know what you want to hear.
Exactly. Tell us who you'd like to see. And Eric Wilbur, of course, we're thinking about you. Thanks again for listening to the Basecamp Podcast, a production of the New England Ski Journal and a production of Seamans Media. He's Mike Specian. I'm David Yaz. We'll see you next time.
New England Ski Journal's Basecamp is a Seamans Media podcast. Seamans Media. Inspiring, informative, insightful.